So my name is Markus, and I will speak to you about sustainable built environment. More specifically, it's related to challenges and opportunities for suspended ceilings. And I will try to link a bit back to presentations that was done earlier. For example, Oscar talked about indoor comfort, acoustics, and lighting. I will cover that a bit. I will also cover embodied carbon, and Annie talked about life cycle assessment. This is also something I will cover a bit. But first, let's introduce myself. So I work for all brands within Saint-Gobain ceilings. For example, Jätkusuutlik, Plafond Metal, and Quick Lock, Connect, but here we focus will be mainly EcoFoam. So I conduct life cycle assessment for our products, which will later be translated into environmental product declarations. I also support the market, for example, related to green building projects. It's a very resource-intensive process, so I will be there in support. I also work in standardization. I'm involved in 2 technical committees. I also work to support projects internally, because as you have understand today, sustainability is a growing topic. So I work with an R&D to support in the eco-design, eco-innovation, to bring more sustainable products on the market. I also work with our suppliers, because it all starts up in the value chain, that we can have a dialogue with our suppliers to buy more sustainable materials. One of the things I like the most in my job, I think, is our sustainability roadmap. I work with continuously updating that. The sustainability roadmap is an action plan for us towards a more including our targets and our action plan. Okay, that is me. Now I will focus on EcoFoam, the rest. Agenda for today, just so you kind of try to see a red thread here. We start a bit with the background and the context. So what are EcoFoam doing? I want to ask you this question. How many in the room knows about EcoFoam? Can I get a hand up? Okay, almost half. For you, the guys online, almost half of the people. So, okay. I will have a brief introduction about EcoFoam, so we're all on the same page. And then I will move over to driving forces. Why are we working with sustainability? Why is sustainability important to us from different perspectives? And then I will spend most of my presentation at this other section, challenges and opportunities for suspended ceilings. I divided this into 4 different legs, and yeah, we will go into detail about that later. We start first with the context. EcoFoam. So it's difficult to mention EcoFoam without mentioning our mission, contribute to a good working environment for the eye, the ear, and the mind. And this is something which is really visible throughout the whole organization. When we develop products, it's always with the end user in mind, with the occupant, the school, the student, which will be in the building, the office worker, which will be in, it's always with the end user in mind. And a good acoustic environment can have significant effects on your health. And I will bring you a few examples here. We have divided our market in 3 different segments: office, education, and healthcare. For example, in the office, a good acoustic environment will reduce the stress levels of the workers. Within school, I actually have 2 examples from the school. When we talk about schools, a good acoustic environment can influence students to perform better. Actually, scientific studies have shown that students perform 25% better on tests when they have a good acoustic environment. Also, it's good for the teacher. Studies have shown that teachers' heart rate decreases with roughly 10 beats per minute when you have a good acoustic environment. So, I mean, this is not something I made up. This is scientific studies highlighting the importance of a good acoustic environment. I actually have a very good example here today. I would like you guys to speak in this room that you have heard the entire day, and then try to go into this room and speak, and you will notice the difference. Here we have an acoustic ceiling, so the speech clarity, it will be much clearer. If you go in and speak in that room, you will get a headache in 5 minutes, I promise. Yes, so there are some examples that a good sound environment can influence our well-being. And I actually have one specific study related to healthcare, because So let's take an example here. This is a study that was done. It was looking at patients in the hospital, comparing, okay, these are the patients who are receiving, who have a good acoustic environment, who have a ceiling to the left here. And they compare this with the patients who did not have a good acoustic environment, who didn't have an acoustic ceiling. You can see that the patients who had an acoustic ceiling had much lower amount of painkillers. I will see if this works here. So I'm pointing at the right here. We can see that the patients in a room with acoustic ceiling, only roughly 11% needed to have extra painkillers. But in a worse acoustic environment, you need more painkillers on average. Okay, now a bit about Ecophone. So we have production sites in 6 different countries. Most recent one opened in Yegorevsk, now I'm pointing at Russia. And then we have production sites in Denmark, Sweden, Poland, and also one plant in Brazil, actually. And for those of you in the room who didn't know about Ecophone, I will explain a bit about our products. Our products consist with a mineral wool core, a glass wool consisting of at least 70% recycled glass bottles. And then in the production, this mineral wool core, we have a glass fiber surface which is laminated on this mineral wool core, and then the edges are cut into the right shapes. And then we have a lamination, we have a painting and drying process. So this is, in very, very brief, our production process. And you see the results up here in the ceiling. Not you online, but you, the guys that are here. I'm sorry. I just want to highlight one thing here. Look at, I say, minimum 70% recycled content. This is something that you should always, this is a terminology we should always use. Because imagine that we take waste and put it into a new product. And I mean, we just have to have the products in our price lists. Then we can say, okay, this is up to 100% recycled content. This is not the way to communicate. You should always take the minimum level, the lowest level that you have of recycled content. That's the product you should communicate with to be transparent and accountable with your sustainability communication. Food for thoughts. Don't trust if someone communicates recycled content up to or maximum level of recycled content. I just have a few examples here of our installations. You can see that we have wall panels here and free hanging units as well. Free hanging units in the bottom to the left, and then wall panels in the middle to the left. But most of our production actually concerns ceilings, as you see in the other pictures. Okay. Any questions on Ecophone so far? Then I will just move on. Driving forces. Why are we working with sustainability? Why is it interesting for us? Well, we can start off with that owners and investors start to care more about the sustainability risks. For example, we have BlackRock here, the asset manager, which see a large risk investing in companies which do not have a plan to decrease their CO2 emissions. BlackRock see that maybe in 4 or 5 years there is a risk that these companies, depending on carbon dioxide emissions, these companies might not be profitable in 4 or 5 years. Also, we see our owners, or Saint-Gobain Group, which we are a part of, that there is a clear net zero target, and there is also a roadmap, and there is also an internal carbon price to be put in place to decrease our emissions. So actually, various tools has been implemented to decrease the emissions, and this is like a top-bottom effect. Investors and owners that put pressure will cause us to decrease our emissions. We also have something specific. The share of green buildings will grow. We just look here, 2018, it was a study done. So they did an interview of architects and contractors and engineers of how many green building projects they have in their portfolio. And you can see for 2018, the share of companies that had more than 60% green building was 27%. Just look at the dark blue here. And for 2021, the share of green buildings were expected to increase. And the companies who are not working with green buildings at all will essentially decrease, or will essentially, it will only be green buildings. I know that I lost some of you in this slide, but okay, in summarize, the green building certification will increase. In the future, all buildings will be certified. And the level of certification will also increase. That's the key takeaway message, even though you didn't understand my full explanation. You just have to know that the certification level will increase. And this influences us as construction product manufacturer, because in green building certifications, there are many points which can be taken just by having the sustainable construction materials. To have sustainable construction materials and having a good indoor environment can contribute to score points in these certifications. Third and last one here at the driving forces. As Anne mentioned earlier, Sweden and France will have climate declarations in law from January 2022, and this will put pressure on us to provide specific EPD data to these buildings when you do the climate declaration. So 3 driving forces hugely influencing us, I would say. Actually, I would also highlight that it's a bit specific for ceilings also. I've talked about construction products in general when I was at my other slide, but I would like to be specific more about because ceilings are part of interior finishing product, implying that they are visible. And interior finishing product was a focus from early on. I have Interface here as an example. Interface, a flooring manufacturer, they launched their Mission Zero already in 1994. So this was a topic from focus from early on. Also, the interior finishing products, they are specification products. And in general, I would say interior designers are very sensitive to sustainability. So that will also influence ceilings. And thirdly here, they are part of the visible. If you want to be a building to send a sustainable message, you need to select interior products which are sustainable. So interior products must reflect sustainability, and they are always in center of indoor air quality discussion. If you have poor indoor air quality, then it's the products that are visible usually comes into this discussion. Some of you are nodding. I see. Thank you. We move over to the next section, if not any questions on this part. Good. So challenges and opportunities for suspended ceilings. I divided this section into four different legs. First, I would say when you talk about sustainability, operations and product footprint, that is the most obvious one, I would think. And then the next one, indoor comfort and well-being, that is actually a very often forgotten part of sustainability. So don't forget about this, indoor comfort and well-being, the social part of sustainability, right? And then it's the Ecophone take on it, transparency, third-party labels, that is the way to go, we think. And then we have a bit of look out for the future. We look at recycling and circular innovations. Okay, but we start off with operations and product footprint. So as Anne mentioned earlier, it's actually about decreasing your emission as much as possible and not trying to compensate. You see a lot of net zero commitments being thrown around like confetti, carbon neutral, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, carbon zero, and so forth. But what it is about, I would like to summarize this into 3 different legs. It's about quantifying your emissions. That is something that many don't know. If you ask the question, have you even quantified the emissions? Have you calculated how much your organization emits? That's the first part. And then the second part is reduction. As much as possible should be reduced. And then finally, if there are emissions left, if you have reduced 99% of your emission, then we maybe can talk about compensating or offsetting the last part. But we should not talk about that until we have reduced all parts. Yes, this is a very nerdy picture, but it illustrates my point a bit. How can you reduce your emissions? We manufacture products in square meters, so either we can reduce the amount of raw materials or amount of energy consumed per square meter. Or we can exchange the type of raw material we use, or exchange the type of energy we use. Replace, for example, natural gas with biogas. So it's reducing and replacing. Impact from energy, and this I have summarized here, but it essentially says what I just said. And if you think this is complex, another way to approach this topic is by thinking of eco-design or eco-innovation. Eco-design is about putting in place manufacturing processes with higher yield, lower waste, or recycle the waste, or putting products on the market with the lower footprint. Eco-innovation is more about replacing materials with new materials, if that makes sense, this distinction. What does it mean for Ecophone? Well, I can say that we have almost eliminated our direct emissions. As Anne talked about earlier, scope 1, 2, and 3, I think we are very much scope 3 when we talked about this. We have all our Ecophone plants in the Nordics are run on green electricity, and the ovens are in most of the cases, the ovens are run on either biogas or on renewable electricity. So natural gas has been phased out. Therefore, our priority, where we can make most of the difference, is by target our value chain emissions, our raw materials. How can we improve them to have even lower emissions? So I will illustrate this by going from our production site to go all the way in the life cycle and look at all parts, not only our production sites. Okay, and I forgot to say this, but to make sure that we actually live up to this, we have introduced a KPI. So we will reduce the footprint of our current product range with 10% in 5 years now. That's our goal. Okay, next section, indoor comfort and well-being. We spend roughly 90% of our time indoors. And this is something that is usually forgotten, so you don't forget about this. If we spend so much time indoors, we have to care about the indoor environment. EPA have some statistics here. EPA is the agency handling environmental topics in the US. The outdoor concentration of looking at indoor concentration, comparing that some my phrasing here is a bit weird. I will just quote this immediately. Concentration of some pollutants are often 2 to 5 times higher than typical outdoor concentration. Okay, I mean, if you have an indoor that is more polluted than outdoors and you spend 90% of your time in it, don't you want to reduce the pollutants as much as possible? Before I move on, I would just like to give an example here. These pollutants can be either formaldehyde or VOC, for example. How many in you in the room have heard about volatile organic compounds, VOC? 1, 2, okay, good. Okay, not all of you. I will have a slide explaining this later. Yes, so just focus on the word pollutants right now. We spend a lot of time indoors, surrounded by indoor air. And I put ventilation here, but you have to understand it is not only about ventilation, it's also about source reduction. Go to the source, eliminate the pollutants at the source. So it can actually be improved by low-emitting products. And the way that is done currently is that manufacturers demonstrate product performance through labels. And the labels are usually self-declaration or based on testing. And then, for example, the French VOC here, the big A+, is a self-declaration on packaging. Of course, it has to be based on tests. But I will make a clear distinction between these labels and something called Eurofins Indoor Air Comfort. It combines all the strictest labels, so you guarantee that you have different limits on, for example, formaldehyde, benzene, toluene. Eurofins combine the strictest limit on all of them, and it also includes an annual inspection of manufacturing plants to make sure that the products are produced consistently. Because, I mean, if you just take one sample, it can be a very lucky sample, but it actually includes an inspection to make sure that you have processes to put an approximately same amount of paint every time, and so forth. Making sure that the product is produced consistently, because that is actually what needs to happen if you're supposed to put sustainable products in the building in the end. Eurofins also involves a regular testing of the product. I would say in general, this is my experience, but I would say there is general poor knowledge about the difference in emission labels, and I would say it makes sense because there are a lot of emission labels. I have a slide summarizing all the emission labels, and I mean it's a jungle of them, and there is no time to make effort to read about all of them. But I would like to summarize here questions that you should ask yourself before relying too much on an emission label. Does the emission label have strict limits? And then, are the products tested regularly and manufactured consistently? And the question for most labels is actually no. So this is something to keep in mind, I think. And one part of the pollutants, which is indoor air, is volatile organic compound. And the sources of this are people, furniture, it can be construction products, and these are compounds that boil at normal room temperature. And they are not toxic immediately, but they can have long-term chronic effects. So therefore, as I said earlier, we spend 90% indoor. Therefore, I think it's very important to spend time on this. Another part which relates to indoor comfort is acoustics. And here I would like you to look at the slide here. I will not point too much, I will describe. This is a study that was done 10 years ago, but is still relevant today. I would say very relevant. You compare green buildings with normal buildings. You see, in terms of performance, in terms of lighting, thermal comfort, air quality, the green buildings are very much better than normal buildings. But when it comes to acoustics, green buildings are on average worse than normal buildings. And why is this? Well, it's unfinished surfaces. It's a lot of the trend is dematerialization, which causes unfinished surfaces. Also, green buildings contains usually large HVAC systems with a lot of noise. Also, to allow a lot of light scattering, light spread, you have open work areas. And this is not ideal. We have to consider acoustics as well, because as I had some examples earlier, it's very important for the well-being. So going forward, I've divided this into 3 parts here. We have to think about indoor air quality, and it's up to the manufacturers to know what they put in the product and know to reduce the amount of chemical emissions and knowing the source of these chemical emissions. And it's up to us, and we are actually doing it right now, to be involved in standardization when it comes to acoustics and indoor sound quality, to put minimum levels and know which parameters to look at in standardization. We should also, we are already now contributing to research and share our knowledge. So a principal in the school knows which type of acoustic requirement that is good to put in a classroom, for example. In the light quality I put here as well, higher light reflectancy, more light spread. It's also a parameter for us, I would say. Okay, 3rd section. I have 8 minutes here, so I will not stress. The problem here when we talk about transparency is there is a lot of different sustainability labels, sustainability certifications, and it can be very difficult to navigate in this jungle of all the different certification. What is the difference between different labels? What is the criteria, and so forth? So I would say the protection or the way to fully show that you are transparent is to choose labels that kind of covers all of your sustainability aspects, and also choosing labels that are externally verified. I think that is the only way to guarantee that your product is sustainable, by not me saying it, by having someone else saying it, having an expert saying that this product is sustainable. Because I mean, I think that's the way it should be done. That's the full trust, when you have someone else guaranteeing that your product is safe or environmentally good. So I have listed here 3 labels, and bear with me, it will be technical for 1 minute, but bear with me. First, health product declaration. This involves a screening of your chemical inventory, so you have to work very closely with your suppliers to check the whole chemical inventory, all of your substances, and these substances are screened versus a priority list, a risk list. And then you're supposed to declare the whole chemical inventory. Of course, some of these substances needs to be censored, but these are screened towards a priority list, and then you have to declare it public. So this is publicly available. Then we have something called Eurofins Indoor Air Comfort, and I have already described this. It involves a testing of the product for emissions, and it combines a lot of different strict emission labels. And the last 2 points here, again, I repeat, inspection of plant and regular testing. This is something that not all labels require. How many of you in the room have heard about HPD or Eurofins? 1 hand, 2 hands, okay, 3 hands. How many of you have heard about EPD? Okay, 10 hands, 20 hands, yeah. I was good. Little market study here also. So I will describe an EPD anyways, environmental product declaration. An LCA is the foundation of an EPD. Assess all the emissions linked with the product throughout the life cycle stages. And the EPD is essentially a way to present the results of a life cycle assessment. Product-specific EPDs are key, because imagine, I have this last bullet point here, product-specific. Imagine if we have 2 products, square meter of product A and 1 square meter of product B. This product weighs 1 kilo, and this product weighs 2 kilos. I mean, you would like to have each CO2 value of each product. You would not like to aggregate it, because then it's not very transparent. Because then the 2 kilo product will obviously have a too low impact. I'm not sure I hope you follow a bit with my example. So I would like to say that product-specific EPDs are key because that's the most transparent way to show your impact. I have an example here for Ecophone where we have listed individual, so it's very technical, sorry, and a lot of numbers, but I'm pointing at columns here, and you can see that each column here represents one product that we have declared values for, and I think that's the way to go. So in summary, go for external verification, and the good thing, of course, there is commercial side of this as well. All of these schemes contribute to score points in green building certification schemes. So we have therefore put an KPI here that 85% of our sales should be covered by 2025. 85% of our sales should be covered by all of these certifications, HPD, Eurofins, and EPD, to demonstrate our environmental impact. Any questions so far? Okay, we move over to the last topic, recycling and circular innovation. And that is really about breaking the linear model to going from linear to circular. And I think Ivo this morning mentioned a bit that the construction sector is responsible for a large share of the world's waste. And of course, this number, 40%, it varies a bit between the countries, a global average, European average, but on average. And usually you think about that waste is generated end of life, but actually waste is generated in more stages in the product life cycle. It's generated from the production and when you install the product. So, I mean, all of this is about finding alternatives to recycle the production waste and the installation waste. But it's not only about finding recycling alternatives. It's also about creating an infrastructure and logistics around this. How can I mean, if we say, yeah, we can recycle our products, I mean, it's actually creating an incitement that building owners or installers actually should recycle. That's another thing. So if we can create an infrastructure and the logistics setup with a take-back scheme, that would be the best, I think. And I'm sorry, the vertical alignment, it doesn't really make sense with the text, I realize now. But just take the picture for itself and the text for itself. Reuse, next step, of course. It's better than recycling. It's one step up in the waste hierarchy. But its business case needs to be established, and there is also a need to find, do we want a middle storage or not? Should you offer it to all products? So I think there is a lot of dilemmas here. Also, when you CE mark the product, if we take back the product and sell it again, should it be CE marked with the same standard as before? I mean, it's a lot of legislative issues as well. So, there are elements to consider on the reuse topic, but it's a very interesting topic and a very important one. Lastly, we have to attack the top of the value chain as well. We cannot only attack the waste, we have to actually incorporate waste in our products as well to reduce the consumption of virgin raw materials. Then you can reach a fully circular economy when you go up as well to look at the raw materials. Okay, so as I said, producer responsibility is key. You need to find recycling alternatives, but you also need to establish a take-back service. Otherwise, the recycling will not happen. Here, for example, we have a Sound Circularity Recycling Service, which was launched by Ecophone in the year. I know I will finish in 30 seconds. And the Sound Circularity Recycling Service has been launched in France and in Sweden. It involves an estimate of the climate savings. Then you book the pickup, and then the pickup is taken back to our recycling facilities and actually recycled into new products. In the end, you get a certificate of the actual climate savings. So you have a CO2 calculation saving model which comes with the Sound Circularity Recycling Service. And we are looking to gradually expand this to more countries. Also, what I would like to mention here is that we at Ecophone try to work with sustainability already in product design. So we have developed a sustainability scorecard to quickly fail or quickly move forward ideas that are sustainable. And so if you have, for example, 10 ideas for a product, maybe you should select sustainability should be a key parameter. But to actually make this happen, you have to have a supplier dialogue as well, because you need a supplier that can supply you with sustainable materials, with a low carbon footprint. And to obtain these values from a supplier, you have to conduct life cycle assessment for new products and new materials that are incorporated in the process. Because life cycle assessment is the only way to determine if a product can pass or fail or not in the product development. So that is very much key going forward, I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Markus. Very interesting speech, and thank you for coming Estonia and find the time. Tere kõigile, minu nimi on Indrek ja mina tegelen Ecofon toodete müügiga Eestis ja teen siis lühikese kokkuvõtte Markuse presentatsioonist. Kõigepealt Markus tutvustas lühidalt Ecofoni missiooni ja tooteid. Ecofon toodab siis akustilisi tooteid, kasutamaks nii lagedes kui seintes ja eesmärk on parandada ruumi siseakustikat. Põhivaldkonnad siis koolid, kontorid, haiglad, lisaks veel siis loomulikult ka kõik muud üldised ruumid, spordisaalid, lennujaamad, kus akustika on oluline ja siis nii-öelda ka sellest tulenevalt ka siis kõneselgus, et oleks kergem aru saada jutu sisust. Teise põhiosana siis tänase teema käsitlusena siis jätkusuutlikkuse koha pealt. Ecofonil on üle maailma siis 6 tehast. Nendest 5 on Euroopas ja lähtudes siis Saint-Gobaini üldisest jätkusuutlikkuse suunast ja strateegiast on ka Ecofoni tehased siis nii-öelda jätkusuutlikkuse teema võtnud fookusesse ja oma tootmises siis tootmisüksustes püüdnud siis nii-öelda minna üle järjest rohkem ja rohkem Põhjamaa riikides 100% taastuvenergiale, kasutades biogaasi. Kuna Ecofon teeb suures osas koostööd Isoveriga, kasutades nii-öelda põhiplaadina Isoveri klaasvilla, mis siis nagu eelnevad kõnelejad ka mainisid, on 70% ja enam osa taaskasutusega klaasi osas ja Ecofon ise oma koostööpartneritega teeb tihedalt koostööd nii metallprofiilide kui ka pinnakatete tootmise osas, kus on samuti taaskasutus olulisel kohal ja kasutatakse taaskasutatud terast 40% ulatuses.